Welcome to the Panther Pause, your source for literacy professional development in 3 minutes or less. In previous weeks, I introduced the concept of disciplinary literacy, or the idea that literacy grows from your basic learning how to read into intermediate literacy skills that look the same across disciplines, such as learning vocabulary, reading comprehension, and writing skills. However, by the time students reach middle school and definitely by high school, we start to specialize into different disciplines. And within those disciplines, how you think, read, write, speak, and listen starts to look extremely different. So learning how to write in English should be different than learning how to write in social studies or geography or even in math. So with that in mind, many teachers ask me about how you can take intermediate literacy skills that are common across the disciplines and teach them in more effective ways, such as teaching vocabulary, reading, and writing. Oftentimes, they've already been to sources like Padlet.org or Pinterest, readwritethink.org, or even, let's be honest, Teachers Pay Teachers, and they've been able to find vocabulary strategies to help teach their students. But let's be honest, none of these sources were created for your classroom, for your discipline, and for your students. So Gillis has a new concept on disciplinary literacy. Let's take all of those strategies that were so effective at the intermediate literacy level and let's adapt them in order to make them work for disciplinary literacy, not just adopt them. So what does that look like? Well, let's think of a normal way we might teach our learners to think within our disciplines. Maybe before they engage with a lesson or a text, we ask them to chart what they already know, what they want to know, and then afterwards what they've learned. This is great for beginning and intermediate literacy, but it never gets to the rigor of what it means to think like, for example, a historian. So how could we adapt this chart? What if instead, for example, in an English class, we start with a passage quote, and students then have to identify the author's meaning and a personal connection? Those are strategies of thinking that authors use as they're crafting their work. However, that same chart might be adapted in a history class to focus on specific events, their effects, and consequences. And that same chart might be adapted within a science classroom to focus on being able to observe facts, make inferences about those facts, and then draw conclusions based on those inferences. Whereas in math, the focus might be on thinking in terms of being able to figure out what a problem is asking, create a plan to solve that problem, execute that plan, and then be able to reflect on it. In other words, thinking looks different across the disciplines, so the way we teach thinking needs to look different too.